Hey, what's up, guys? It's me again, Jack Lion. I got this new webcam, so I thought I'd try it out. But anyway, today's video, I wanted to do a track breakdown for my song Opaque. It came out last year around October, I think. And it came out in the fall, and I had the lucky honor of having it featured on NOISIA radio. So I thought I would just sort of take another look at it in hindsight, maybe break down some of the things that I thought were unique about it, and maybe analyze for myself as well as you guys why it possibly caught their attention. But in any case, I'd also wanted to preface this video by saying I was lucky. I feel lucky to have gotten that because I've never gotten anything like that other than that. I've barely gotten on labels. I'm mostly independent, so to have that happen to me felt really lucky. But just to give you a little backstory before I get into the actual track. So basically, I had been doing a lot of editing for visuals, and I accidentally, in my haste, deleted some files, and there happened to be my entire samples folder, which was really stupid of me, and I won't go into how that happened, but I felt so dumb because I was emptying my trash can like an idiot, and I realized the next morning what I've done and what that meant for me. So I lost access to all my projects. And so basically, I had no more samples, no more projects. Some friends were kind enough to chip in, and I wound up recovering some of them, but all my old projects were ruined. I couldn't go back to any of them, and I really felt like devastated by this at first. Kind of just got around to talking to some friends about it, and eventually kind of felt in myself that maybe this won't be such a big deal after all. Maybe I can get through this. So what I did was I started making some samples, and I'll get into some of those as well and how I made some of those sounds. But yeah, for the most part, I just got inspired to just try a different approach. So maybe if you're struggling in your music and you have high aspirations like I've always had, try something new. Like sometimes we don't always get things right the first time, and when we grow, our perspectives can be a little lopsided or skewed as we acquire new skills and try and fit that retrospectively into our vision. So I think the fact that I lost my samples did affect me in a way that drove me to finish this track and kind of roll with some of the ideas that I had, as well as lean into the sounds I was recording. So I guess to summarize it, I think that that combination of recorded sounds as well as just the looseness and character of the track kind of helped it stand out. So I'll get into exactly why that was here in the actual track breakdown. All right, so here we are in Ableton now, and this is the track. This is Opaque. It's only like 60, 70 channels, which might sound like a lot, but I feel like a lot of tracks that they like to feature probably have like hundreds or something, but who knows. Now, if you want to follow along with this, if you want to access the project itself, I will be making this available via my Patreon. So those of you who have the project, feel free to follow along. I'll include a version with the frozen channels and a version with the flattened channels, so that way if you want to and you have the plugins, you can go check out all the automations and stuff that I did. But I did do a lot of things in Ableton stock. Like I think I'll start with the drum beat and then move on to like the bass sounds and some of the more like trippy like effects and stuff later on. But yeah, it's a pretty simple track all in all, although like it is sort of a head spinner in the sense that there's some trickiness going on with the rhythm. So what that is a polyrhythm. Let me show you what I mean. So like if we go over to the bass first, actually, I just want to describe what's going on here. So if we were to solo this and turn the metronome on. So in counting that, we see that there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits in a bar. And over here there's 4, but really what it is if I were to paste this one here, it's 5. I just took the first one out because that's where the kick happens. So the downbeat happens, and then what we have is 5 notes or 5 beats in the space of that. And in between this space where 5 notes are happening steadily, we also hear the beat. And what the beat is playing is more or less sort of like hip hop. It's a pretty simple beat. Something like that, you know? Now there's a lot of effects and like top end perks and loops and things like that I made. So without that, all we have is this. So that's pretty steady, and that's sort of what your ear locks into as the backbeat, or the basis rather of the beat. Backbeat is something else. So the extra stuff added gives it a shuffly kind of feel. So what's going on is we have a layer like this. Okay, that's a loop that I've made prior, and I think I used it, might have chopped it up a little bit, done some editing, and here's another one. So yeah, I just thought they sounded cool together. I did a lot of the processing and stuff when I made the loops, so I didn't really have to wind up doing much besides EQ. And then I have some other noises kind of here and there, like I got this sizzler kind of sound. That just kind of sits in the back, kind of like tickles the ear a little bit while the rest of the beat's going, because there's a lot of this, like a lot of the sound design was really dry, so I think that the hats and stuff really wound up making it sound lush. Honestly, like in retrospect, looking back, a lot of this wasn't that balanced, like hence why I was really surprised they went with the track. So I wanted to point out there how, if you notice, the time parameter is automating, so you'll notice that it goes from like a tight sounding kind of bass into something that's a little bit more open. So a lot of what's going on is happening in the actual processing of the sound. And also I have 3 layers here. One's sort of like the low end. This one's like a harmonic layer. They're all sort of following the same automations though, because I think I copied these later on. And then this is sort of like a noise. So by itself, it sounds pretty dry. I also want to show you guys, because I think it sounds kind of strange without the hats and stuff. Like every little bit I feel like contributed. Like you could argue that there's like a lot going on in here, but I think that because there's a lot going on, it fills out the track in a pleasing way. Like check this out. I don't know, it sounds cool, but it also sounds really weird to me because I feel like these hats are so necessary. So yeah, without the cerebralness of the high end, I feel like this beat kind of falls apart. So I think that like there's a lot going on here that like it kind of tells a story in a way, because there's a lot going on. There's sort of like this evolution of like rhythmic coherence from part to part, because you know you have some beats here, and let me just go back to the bass again. You have some parts where it's like you have 5 beats, or yeah, you have like 5 beats in the space of 2. So that would make like basically one bar have 10 beats, which is really like wrong. And it's not that it's wrong, it's just that we're not used to hearing it like that. And then I think I'll do something here where I go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. But then this last one is like a sloppy triplet or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. So it's really weird because your ear will probably latch on to this, but you'll have like the beat of the kick and snare happening too. So you feel it as sort of being like one cohesive rhythm, but it does switch up. Like here, there's like a beat where there's space, and then there's another beat where there's space. But what makes it weird is, you know, there's space at the end of the bar and at the beginning of it. Pay attention to what happens there. I don't know if I would call it tension or release, but basically what's going on is I think that like why this works here is because, you know, there's a lot of confusion that I still experience even to this day when I listen to this track. And I won't lie about that, but I think that like once we hit the end of the bar, it sort of like reaffirms our feelings, where like we're feeling this out, we're trusting the beat. It feels like it's going to fall apart, but there's something about it that's holding it together. And we don't really feel affirmed in that until we reach the end of the bar here, where we get a moment to chill out and be like, oh, okay, so like I was right. You know, if we were headbanging to this, like this is where we might arrive. It kind of feels like home. But then what I do is immediately after that is I kind of bring you back into it and say, nope, we're going back into this. This is going to get weird. Check it out again. So we got that boom, dun, dun. That kind of to me signals the end of a passage, and then the very next thing we hear is bow. Whoa. You hear that little suction? Like it's trying to relax, but it like there's something bringing the tension back up. So there's this feeling of release when we get here, but then the tension is kind of reintroduced at the beginning of the bar, on the next bar, which is bar 3 here. And then we go back into a similar rhythm. And I like to, like I said, just tie in the beat by adding this little space at the end. You have space to hear these little fills and things that cue the ear to say, yeah, we've arrived at this point. The last 2 bars, I sort of do something a little different at the end here. Take a listen. So we have like a little breath of fresh air right here. Kind of feels like the beat's winding down, but then we get picked back up by this higher pitch. You know, this whole time we've been hearing this low C, and then all of a sudden it jumps up to a G, and then goes back all the way down to like a low G. And then we hear the familiar kind of doo doo. And we're used to hearing that by now, so maybe subconsciously that sort of ties the whole thing together, yet also signals that there's more tension to be had. Okay, so we have this part here with these bass one-shots that I made. So I kind of spliced these two together. Like this one's from What Goes Bump, my sample pack, and it's called Dive Charge, and this one's called I can't even see, Short Wob. So I combined these samples and I think like consolidated things and chopped them up, so we get this end result. This sort of glitchy passage into a more rhythmic wob, and it sort of dubs it out. Like we hear that sort of spacey rhythm from the delays on the snare, but it's on a different kind of sound. And then, you know, the delays as they fade, we hear this suction come back in right here. So that's another thing I wanted to point out too. So if you look in between some of the spaces in the bass, for the fills, I layered them up with the sounds of the bass, but what's going on here is I have a group with the two sounds and a little bit of EQ. But what's really happening to make these sound different is I have this one delayed by 24 milliseconds using Ableton's delay compensation. All right, so what that means is we're gonna hear this sound 24 milliseconds before this one. It makes it sound wider, therefore more stereo. So take another look at that right here, 24 milliseconds. If you don't know where that is, it's right here, this button that says D. That's gonna open up the delay compensation. And that can be useful for a whole slew of things, but what is relevant to us now is just creating this effect where we hear one before the other. It's a subtle difference. You might be able to hear it better on headphones, but if you want to experiment with this, try this. Let's take any sound and make it mono. Okay, let's try this one. I'll make it mono with the utility. So we can kind of fake the stereo if we do this. As opposed to just one. So just kind of splits the sound into a more wider, kind of distant sounding feel. So the reason I chose to make those more spatial or more distant is because I don't want them to be confused as the main sound. What they are more so is a way to connect the main sound from the expressive contours of the fills. So if the fill goes down, the bass might come back in by kind of giving a contour impression of going upwards. So, or maybe it's the opposite, however it feels to you. It's more about just leaning into like the feeling of it, like I said, and just thinking to yourself, like, does it feel like this is giving me relief, or does it feel like it's tying it together, or does it feel like tension? Do I want that here? Do I want to move that here? A lot of this happened just by putting something down and then switching it up in certain places. So it was something that came together basically by putting the beat together first, trying a few of my samples for the top perks, and then honestly, I just got straight away into trying this weird rhythm because something that day just made me want to try it. Now, by this point, you might be wondering, well, how do you make like 5 notes fit in the space of 4 and stuff like that? And that would be a good question, and I would like to show you. So let's say we have operator, and I'll move over here just so we don't interfere with the track. And I will make 1 bar. All right. Our patch is going to just be a saw with a little bit of filter. Okay, that'll do. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some notes on C. All right, so now we have 8 notes of C going on here. All right, well, what I can start to try and do is decide, well, what do I want to fit in this space of 4 or 2 or whatever. So what I would like to do is try and fit 5 notes in the space of 2 beats. So what that means is we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these MIDI notes fill out the duration of these 2 beats, okay? Now, how do we do that? Well, what we need to do is first create a selection of MIDI. Now, if we want 5 notes, we actually need to have 6. All right, now the reason we're adding an extra MIDI note, even though we want 5, we need 6 because when we highlight all these notes, these little tabs appear up here. And for some reason, these tabs don't appear from end to end on the MIDI. The tab just appears from the beginning to the beginning of the last MIDI note. It doesn't matter how many you do. So because we want to fit 5 in the space of 2 or 4 or whatever, we need one extra one so that we can do this, drag the tab, and now we can delete this extra one, and we have, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes in the space of 2 beats. All right, so what does that sound like compared to maybe 4? Well, let's see. Let's make the next one just fit 4 into that space. So listen to how different it's going to sound with the metronome on. So we got this dun 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 dun, which is actually kind of catchy to me, not gonna lie. 5 is actually, it sounds pretty cool over 2 or 4 sometimes. Let's hear it again. So you hear that metronome going like tick tock, tick tock. So notice that over the space of 2 ticks, we had 5 beats. Starting to get it now? So that might feel a bit abrupt, you know, just going straight into like quarter notes again. So I might give this one a little bit of extra space, and I might just say like, move this one over, maybe do like triplets and get a little sloppy with it. No, that doesn't sound good to me, so let's try this. Maybe. Yeah, and like I would probably fit like a little sample or fill in here to fill that gap in. And that's sort of how I started to work. So obviously I had the beat over top of it and everything to play with. So if you want to try this workflow, I would say first start with a simple beat pattern and give it like a pleasing hat loop or like lush kind of top layer of sounds. And that doesn't just mean like sustained ambience, because that will give it a more chilled out effect, which isn't what I was going for. But you can by all means experiment with this and create your own vibe for it as well. So, but if you're trying to copy, or not copy, but rather if you're trying to get into polyrhythms and stuff like that, a good place to start would be to just try simple beat patterns with maybe like one synth or one perc doing something that's a little odd over that. Another rhythm we could try would be to fit maybe 7 in the space of 4. So what I'll do is I want to extend this MIDI clip so I have more room. And I want to create 8 of these. And I'll highlight the section and I'll drag it so that 7 notes will play in the span of 2. So that will sound like this. So that might be a little bit harder to hear, more annoying. Let's see. So yeah, I like that. So what I might do is say like, even though the idea was to put 7 beats into the space of 2, what I did was so I hit these tools up here. This is really useful. This can expand or contract the MIDI by a specified amount, that being times 2 or divided by 2, creating half the length. So we can experiment with these complex rhythms in a tighter gap or a wider gap. I just happened to choose a wider one because I felt the rhythm was a little too fast and insistent and was kind of overriding the feel of the 4. And they just felt a little tense to me. So I kind of like how this feels here, but I feel like if it were to continue, it would be a little off-putting. So instead what I'm going to do is this, delete these. Or maybe even delete the last one. So this might feel like kind of like a really fast triplet. So yeah, that's how we start to play with these sort of strange polyrhythms over our beats, is we can create MIDI patterns that work like this by stretching the MIDI. Now, another way we could do this is with audio. Find something like, just like a perc. Perfect. And let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing, but a little bit differently. So I'm going to copy this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we don't need an extra one like we do for MIDI. If we just consolidate this, what we have here is a group of 5 evenly spaced hats. So how do we make that fit from 5 beats into, from 5 beats specifically, the duration of 5 beats to the duration of 4 beats? So we got this value of 5 beats. We want to make it fit into the duration of 4. So what we do is the thing you do to stretch these tracks is hold shift and command and then hover over the top of the clip here where it's colored so that this bracket comes up. But if you notice this little black dot up here, yeah, that black dot is going to allow us to stretch rather than, just, I forget the name, just, it's basically allowing us to compress it or stretch it however we want rather than like trim it. So if we were to do that, this will happen. But make sure you keep holding down shift and command. Otherwise, if you let go, sometimes it like resets it. Like, yeah, like that time I let go of shift and command and it reset. So what you want to do is move this until it lines up exactly with the beat here. And if you have to zoom in, like zoom in really far, but usually it'll kind of do like a light snap to the grid. So if you finesse it, if you're careful, it should work out. So check this out now. So that's all right. Let's see what that sounds like with like a kick and snare loop. Not bad. That last one might not sound great there. So like you're always free to like break the pattern. You know what I mean? Just make it do something a little bit more on the grid. So I think the combination of being off the grid and on the grid kind of helps these odd things, odd ideas work. You can make a lot of these sounds yourselves if you just get creative with effects like LFOs and stuff. Like this one in particular, I don't remember how exactly I made it, but like you could do something like really easily with like a noise. Let's see. All right, so with this noise we have, it has like a sort of tone to it. So what we can do is we can take this like filter and we can filter it. Right? So like something that you can do is, without even thinking much about it, is put an LFO on the filter and make it like fast and go from fast to slow. You know, another thing you can do is do the same thing to the pitch. Here's another trick. I like to use arpeggiator and put it on free mode. So what I can do is make a rack like so and attach the rate from the arpeggiator to macro 1, and then from here attach the frequency rate of the LFO to macro 1. And what I want is an inverse relationship between the two. So I'll just invert either one of them. Doesn't really matter. I'm not going to get too specific. So you can make these like trippy sort of sound effects by using samples and noise and stuff like that. A lot of these sounds are just basic sound design, but with kind of a specific way of processing it that isn't truly mine, but that I've adopted into my workflow over time. So just more bags of tricks, you know, more things like that. One in particular that I really, really liked, which is why I chose this sound to open the track with, is this arpeggiated sound I got from my eurorack actually. All right, so what I did for this sound was this. So this is sort of the main rhythmic part of it. So doom 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 doom. So okay, I want to show you guys what it sounds like without all this processing as well. So I just had a delayed arpeggiation, or a sequence actually. I had a sequencer going, and that was being quantized by like a scale, just like a minor scale, and all I really did was let it run free and like play with the rate of it a little bit. But for the most part, it's just a simple sine wave or something, and it came out sounding really dirty, but I also put a little bit of delay on it as well. So I did a lot of EQing, like you can see, like I cut out a lot of the muddy low end. So no more of that. A lot of the mids were tamed, and this actually is a big reason why it sounds the way it does. Basically, it's tape saturation, and that tape saturation I think made it sound like a lot more smooth and natural. Even though it's kind of an aggressive sound, it sounds really cool. Midsection, let's see. So what I did for this part was I dubbed out a lot of the sounds so that there was long delay trails, like on this sound especially. I think it was the melodic sound that I was using. Yeah, so what I did was I put a little bit from the melodic sample. See, it's called Messages from Beyond or whatever. I put that one in the sampler and I did the little rate trick here. Put a little delay on it, a little bit of processing. And so what that did was it really sustained that feeling of like relief and tension that I feel like the end of this song or the end of this part gives off. The bass gets dubbed out too. There's a little bit of tape bending there. And then, you know, right when it feels like the suspense is gonna kill you, the bass comes back in with this little drum beat. This one sound here, now this is in the intro, beginning, or sorry, the beginning, middle, and end, and this is what it sounds like. I think that was a drum loop I processed with Portal and flattened or something. I can't quite remember, but I used some kind of processing that was a little bit like sporadic and random, created this sound. It kind of just makes the whole thing sound like it's coming from the inside of a garage or a cave or something. Without it, it sounds kind of dry. And so what I did for this section was I reversed it. So I really like the way it turned out because the processing sounds really good going to the bass sounds really good going to the saturator, the low end of this sample. So it sounded really cool when the amplitude would come up. It would bite into the saturator and create this really cool like tone. I just felt like that was the perfect interplay between like the bass sound and the drums. So that, I don't know, that sound really helped tie some things together for me personally. And same with the outro. It just wouldn't have the same effect without it. It's all right. It's pretty cool actually, but then you put this in there. So even though there's like a lot of noise coming from like both the melodic sound and the like reverse drum set, it's kind of cool because they both still fit into their own sonic space, so they wind up layering and complementing each other really well. Get ready, that's actually my voice. I just decided impromptu like I would record into the project. Get ready. Get ready. And I thought it turned out sounding pretty cool, so I decided to keep it. I did a little bit of vocal processing and I used my Max device to do some pitch shifting on it as well. So what this one is doing is it's turning the left speaker up 7 semitones or down 7 semitones, and the right speaker up 7 semitones. So it's splitting the stereo image and then pitching both around oppositely. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out on my Gumroad. I also have it, actually it's correcting the pitch in the right ear, so just the left one is down by a fifth. So you get this kind of layered tone. And you also have the option to delay the left-right channels so that they're in time with each other or out of time, and I can make it sound more stereo. So I did that with both of these voices. So what I did was, for this part, I actually used the same bass from this drop. All I did was filter it to kind of build it in, like... There's a little bit of Endless Smile on there, I think. Although I can't seem to find it. Oh, here it is. And then the filters just come back in full spectrum. So I kind of like this part right here because this is where I add that little perk part. And that's sort of cueing us back into the beat from earlier. So this beat comes in like, I think it's the same drum beat as the one before. And we just got, it's pretty much the same melody from this buildup right here. And then the contour of the melody starts descending here as the kick drum sort of pounces, or not pounces, but there's like a flurry of kicks here. And as the bass is sort of winding down, I put a little bit of automation onto this flanger here and phaser. And you can kind of hear that squeakiness come out at the very end. So you can hear around this part, the bass line comes back in from the previous drop. So we're effectively tying all the ideas together finally. And as that's happening, you can kind of hear this bass start to fade into the back. hope that this gives you some ideas and some insights into my workflow as well as maybe your own, and perhaps gives you some inspiration to go ahead and try something different. I embraced the change that came along with the consequences of deleting my samples on accident. So hopefully that's a lesson learned to me as well as you all, to always back up your files as well. So with that, I say take care, guys. Have a good one. Until next time. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jack Line again, and I just wanted to end the video by saying I tried to keep this video as concise as possible, so I wound up cutting a lot out of the original video that I made. That video is an hour long, and it goes into a lot more depth on the track and the breakdown itself. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. It's on the Patreon. If you guys want me to elaborate more on these concepts, just let me know in the comments, and I'd love to go deeper on these topics, because working with polyphony in the DAW, stereo treatment, just all these kinds of things that will help you make better music will help me make better music if I can help teach it to you, if that makes sense. So I hope you learned something today, and I hope you guys have a good one. See ya.